When the sound of your voice gets lost in all of the noise, just remember you're not on your own. I'm home for you.
Well, hi everybody. It's beautiful day in the neighborhood. Thursday, November 29th, 2018. And we're back on another edition of Addiction. Got a minute? And I'm joined here with my co-host, Patty. Hi, Patty Pike.
Good morning, Howie.
Good morning. And we were joined by that beautiful song by Diane Buckley that we heard last week with Arthur Westinghouse from Westinghouse Intervention and Family Coaching. And just want to give a nod out to those guys. It was wonderful of Arthur to be on the show last week. Hey, Patty, how are you?
I'm really good. Yeah, just it's been one of those crazy intervention weeks. So just got back from Salt Lake City yesterday late and just kind of landing kind of this morning with some coffee and waking up for another day and off to work on another case.
Well, we've been busy. You came back from Salt Lake. I came back from doing one yesterday as well. And Patty and I were talking before we launched the show about a number of subjects, but I'll start with this. I've been working on this case for the last couple of weeks, and with all due respect and a nod to the mother who I'm sure is listening to this today, and I'm giving her quite the nod. We laugh about it now, but oh my gosh, the resistance I got from wanting to move forward, from who to be involved, from who to write letters, from for me to talk to. From day to day, it was yes and then a call no, then a text yes and then a text no. And it was like pulling teeth. But on the way back, I had the mother with me, and the mother kept turning and saying, "Have I told you thank you? Have I told you how much I think? Have I told you?" And I just laugh. And she said, "You stuck with me. You stuck with my son when nobody else would. And I'm so grateful." And I truly appreciate that so much. The names have been changed to protect the innocent, so we'll just leave the names out of it. But I will say to her, to Mom, you're welcome. And, of course, to her son. What is interesting this time around with this experience was the fact that the bottom line alternative to doing this was pretty unique. I know when I told you about this the other day, it made you laugh. This gentleman's legal situation was perfect. It was perfect, meaning not, and what happened after I told, Patty, you don't know. After everything I told you about, he didn't go and get tested the day before like he should have.
Okay.
And probation was in the process of writing a warrant.
Okay, nice.
So when I called probation and updated them, they said, "Oh, yeah, Howie, by the way, it's a good thing you're there, because if you weren't there today, they'd be coming after him." So I did this thing, and I made Patty laugh last week. I said, I got somebody, and I'm working with probation and the local police, and I'm going to have a police car roll up and have the vision of what I wanted to do was turn to the client and say, "Let's come to the window." And there's two vehicles, and I'm sure he'd see the police car. And at that point, I would say, "Which car do you want to get in?" Because if you go with me, you'll go to, the treatment that we had spoken about. Or if you go in the police car, it's 2.5 years. So you're going to go that way. What do you want to do? We didn't get that far. Patty, listen to this. Been about an hour or so getting up in the morning with coffee and, sharing everything that's going on. And he was okay. He wasn't really, he was being really very nice about it. But he wants to have a cigarette, so we got out on the front porch. And we hear squeak, squeak, the rumble of a truck, and squeak, squeak. And here comes a garbage truck in front of his house. Really slow. Squeak, squeak, squeak. And he turns to me and goes, "What the hell?" And I go, "Yeah, I don't." And it pulls into the driveway of his house. And I go, "You're a garbage man?" He goes, "Yeah, but why is he going so slow?" I go, "I don't know." And the guy gets out of the truck and he walks over and he goes, "What the hell's going on? What's with all the police cars?" He goes, "I'm driving up. There's going left. There's going right. There's 2 at the top. There's 2 at the bottom."
Oh, I love it.
I go, "Wow." All I kept saying was, "Wow."
Aren't you popular?
I didn't want to say, "I don't know." I didn't want to say, I don't want to lie. But that, I dismissed the fella and let him get the garbage. And I turned to the client and I said, "Well, that issue about probation?" He goes, "Yeah, they're there for me, aren't they?" I said, "They are. Look." And we walked over a few feet around the house and there were 2 of them. And he goes, "So am I being arrested?" I said, "No, you're not. I spoke with probation and we came to this arrangement. Nobody wants to see you go to jail. What everybody wants is for you to be better." And I have made arrangements. We're good. And I reviewed with him everything. He doesn't need to take care of anything. Everything's been taken care of. Just come with me. And he looked and he said, "Yeah, all right." And a little while later, we get in the car, and as we drive by the police, we're all waving like the Queen. And they're waving back. They're waving back with these big smiles. And the kid looks over to me. He goes, "Wow, you really did that, huh?" I said, "Well, no, you did it. It's who you are. This addiction is addiction. The you who people love are who waved at you." He goes, "Yeah, I get it." So there was a bit of this therapeutic healing even in the leaving of the house.
Yeah.
And I got to say it was a gift from above. The preparation that I attempted, the letters that I attempted. Now I'm still following the Deborah and Jeff Jay's philosophy, and I prefer very much to do everything with this heart first. They say love first, and I kind of re-engineer it to say heart first, because a lot of times love is tough, and a lot of times love is sometimes uncomfortable, and sure doesn't seem it at the time, but with the heart meaning, when this is over, you will be better, and people will be happier. So let me start by saying, and thank you very much for listening to my story, and it really was made for movie. I mean, can you imagine watching a movie and watching this truck, and it happens to have the audio of squeak, squeak.
Howie, you know what? I am I just love you so much. Like, seriously. You have some really interesting cases. I mean, that is classic. But not only that one, but the one, after I got off our podcast last week, I couldn't help but I kept smiling about the other one that you talked about as well, about the bikers. And I was just like, oh my God. I was just like, here we go. It's like, is this supposed to be a movie kind of intervention show here? Yeah, pretty cool. Really cool.
I'm telling you that my wife cracks up whenever I have a friend who's living with us right now, a nurse, ER nurse, who's hanging out for a while, and he rides a motorcycle and rides a big V-twin. And when he pulls up, she'll joke about, where's the rest of the gang? They're coming in to talk to Howie. She knew nothing of it before, but afterwards the people on the street told her what it was about. And
Right.
It's funny because it's been wonderful how I've been able to keep my business separate from my life and my wife's knowledge of what I do. I live in a small community where there is no such thing as anonymous, really, so people share.
Right.
But anyway, I just wanted to cover that base. But thank you for that, and I hope people understand the nature of what we do is tough. It's definitely tough, but life has smiles. Life has humor. There are humorous components, or if not humorous, comforting elements to what we do. And
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because you just never really know when you take on an intervention case what the family system is going to bring to you. And, that's why I always kind of talk about, really having that experience and education and being prepared to really wear a lot of different hats and to try and learn, and learn how to roll with that resistance, and I think that the whole model, the model of change, when you think about the education component of, how, I actually got educated in the model of change many, many years ago. And, and I kind of look at that in lots of ways in terms of some of the intervention cases that I've taken on, and some of those folks are in pre-contemplation and contemplating and they're making a decision, and then all of a sudden they become resistant. And so, as an interventionist, I'm able to kind of go with the flow, and sort of really support each individual and meet them where they're at. So I don't have to make their decisions for them, that I can be a support for them so they can actually walk through their own resistance and feel that they are making a decision, that they are finally standing up and feeling that support from other people. But everyone may have some different ideas and thoughts and feelings as they kind of go through their process of coming together, may have different ideas, but everyone coming together is really, that really is the key for an interventionist, is so we can kind of, keep things moving in a direction of helping the identified patient.
Keep them moving. Progress, motivation, getting the juggernaut moving along. That's actually an excellent segue. You had no idea what I was writing as you were talking, and what I was thinking about is the fact that we refer to this phrase, we want to meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. This doesn't mean we want to let them stay stuck.
Absolutely not. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that there's a big difference in helping somebody move past where they're at and enabling them to continue to be there.
Right.
The big deal is this. By the time an individual like you or I are called in to enact change, the person has made quite the statement that they're not moving, that they are stuck. I liken it to a tar pit. The tar pit addiction, you'll hear me say that from time to time. Mm-hmm. There's an interesting thing which happens with people who are in the tar pit for a long period of time. The tar pit may get cool. Mm-hmm. And when that tar pit cools, you're basically stuck. So in this metaphor, you need to initiate change and action to motivate people to go from through the stages of change and warming up that tar pit by doing things. And the act of warming it up, the act of getting people to take action, to sparking their either interest or reminding them of the value of other loved ones and the reason why they shouldn't be stealing or robbing or being irresponsible in whatever ways. That's the difficult part of the job pre-intervention.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one day, Patty, your phone rings.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, in your experience, at what stage of change is the loved one at when you get that first call?
Well, I think that they are definitely in this contemplative state of, really maybe pre-contemplative and contemplative. They're in this kind of like middle ground of trying to figure out, what are the next steps that they need to take because they can't, because they're in this hopeless, usually it's a hopeless state, or, they are just tired and frustrated and just over it and angry. And they go through this emotional kind of, cycle that they probably have done and gone through thousands of times, by the time that they get to someone like me. And so if my theory is that if I can, at that point, intervene on that individual and bringing them from pre-contemplation to contemplating, to sort of want to make some change, but also to support them and acknowledge that emotional chaos, if you will, and sort of give them a sense of hope, okay? Because it's the hope card that I believe, especially when you've got a parent, you've got parents of their son, daughter, grandson, if you have like a family member that has been in this sort of, cycle for years and years, and they have been trying to do this on their own or using other people to help them to do that, to get through that process, to try and get the person help. But it's really, they really need hope. They have to have hope. Hope is I believe that hope is the most important aspect of getting them from pre-contemplation to contemplation. And with all the anger and blame and all that other stuff that goes along to kind of get them to that. But if you can present hope to them, you are in a really good shape, because at that point, as an interventionist, you are, instilling in them the courage to kind of move place of fear into that place of hope, which they are not used to feeling hope. They feel hopeless, desperate. So, I think, that's just kind of that's my new word, actually, is hope. And I say that just because I was talking to someone a few weeks ago, and it's not my first time of thinking of that, but I was talking to someone a few weeks ago, and it was a family member that had called in about their loved one. And they had there was a lot of complexities in their relationship, and they were definitely they were not engaging with each other anymore for some years. And the lady, before she got off the phone, she said, "You're the only person that's given me a sense of hope." She said, in the last 3 years. She said, "I finally feel this sense of hope." And she hired me. She hired me to move forward with the intervention case. And it sort of gave me this message of what is it that I'm trying to do when I get these calls from family members. I'm trying to support them, as they sort of go through their process of picking up the phone and telling their story and, and helping them kind of through that process. But at the end result is hope, and if I can give them that hope, then I can I can just kind of, move forward with my process of, working with that family system.
Well, it's incredible that you actually hit the nail on the head, the term hope, giving people the enthusiasm to take action. This is, I truly believe that somewhere along the line, in your experience, you put you connected some very interesting dots. When you said that people have experienced these sensations of helplessness thousands of times because of the state their condition has put them and their family into, you are absolutely right. It became normalized. So trauma became normalized. Living in abject, disgusting conditions when in the very next room you're in an upper middle class house, but yet your room is disgusting, and you put a cigarette out. You step outside to have a cigarette in your socks, and you take the head of the cigarette, half of a cigarette because of its habit, and you pinch off the live end of the cigarette to the floor because you want to save the rest of the cigarette. And you take your foot, which is just a sock, and you squish it out. And then you walk back into the house and put that sock in the shoe. That's normalized. And of course it's not right. But what you do is you remind people, listen, this isn't the way it has to be. And look past the pathology of the addiction and look at the person behind it and look at the love that the person has, that the family has. And you give people hope of being able to get that person back. That's an interesting move, Patty.
Well, it really is. I mean, if you think about it, I really like your concept, and I'm such a analytical kind of person. And I'm kind of like, I just drew a little diagram on my notebook, and it basically, it says the trauma is in the middle, the normalize is on the top, and on the bottom is the hope, right? So, I mean,
Wow.
those are really some of the ways that I sort of take information from family members, as well as I'm kind of, answering the phone and I'm writing down. A lot of the times I'm not writing down the information. I'm actually thinking about how that system is run, and it's sort of like, if, my belief is that if you can get to that place of hope, because they don't know what that is, but that's what they want. It's a done deal. It's a done deal with as an interventionist. For me, it is, and I've gotten there many, many times. And anyway, I think it's a great analogy how you've described it as well.
Well, let's take that from there after the break. I'm with my co-host Patty Pike, and we'll just if we just give it 1 second, we'll be back in a moment.
Service representatives.
Well, we are back. Thank you very much for your patience. I am joined today with my co-host Patty Pike from where in the world are you today, Patty?
San Francisco.
Lovely San Francisco, which I just want to give a nod again to our first responders, firefighters, and the folks who have been out there dealing with the just insanely difficult, painful, and catastrophic. Talk about trauma, the fires, and our hearts and prayers go out to those who are impacted by the fires all throughout California at this point in time, and wish for the very best.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, Patty. You held up a chart. Describe the chart because folks can't see it.
Okay. Well, I it's in a box form, and right in the middle. So there's 3 boxes, and the middle box I've got trauma, and the top box I've got normalize, and then the bottom box I've got hope. And I think this is how I think. I mean, these are kind of, you know, I, because to me, what we were talking about, you know, in our descriptions of dealing with these family systems, that they have become very normalized in the way that they live their lives. It's like the elephant is in the room and everyone is walking around the elephant, but everyone knows that the elephant is there. And when the elephant screams and yells, everyone is kind of screaming and yelling as well. And we all kind of know that concept. But, and then all of a sudden the elephant becomes calm and then everyone else becomes calm because they don't want to stir up the elephant anymore. But there's never really that, there's always that underlining uncomfortability. There's always that underlining frustration and desperation because they know that that system or there's going to be another, some sort of crises or some sort of, something was going to go on. So really never any kind of hope. There might be some Band-Aid effect hope. You know, they might have a nice dinner one night and someone might put a sentence together and even have a paragraph about their life. However, but they always come back to this, this trauma. And what is the trauma for family systems? The trauma is really anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety that happens in family systems. PTSD comes out of trauma. I mean, I have a family, and I won't get into details, obviously. Any kind of cases that I work with is very confidential. And, a lot of our conversations are all based on, yes, some cases, but,
names have been changed to protect the innocent. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, and so there's many things that we do, Howie and I do in terms of protecting and keeping confidentiality, keeping that very private from our conversations. However, I was working with this family for some time, and it's interesting because you're going to have like these family members that will kind of start to embrace you as part of the family system. And even family members that may not reach out to you. I'm talking about case management services. You might not meet that person for a year, or might not meet them at all. And then all of a sudden you get these calls from family members because you are starting to become like the healthy one in the family system, that everyone can kind of like relax and start to feel that they are too validated in how they feel. So it starts to give a lot of people hope that they too can make these changes. And, I think it's a very interesting, it's a very interesting path, intervention and case management.
You've put the pieces together really well. I took your chart, turned it upside down. The trauma in the middle, okay. It becomes normalized, so it settles down. The detritus settles to the bottom. It becomes normalized, and we rise up and provide hope. So let's put that, nice. Let's work on this graphic because there are the other components you threw into it. The impact of trauma.
So you put the trauma in the middle still, though, right?
Trauma's in the middle because shit happens.
Okay. Right.
Stuff happens. And
normalize on the bottom.
Because the detritus becomes normalized. It falls to the bottom. And what we want to do is give light to hope. And, of course, that can go up. But let's talk about family systems. The blunt reality is it seems that substance-related issues almost always have a direct mental health component, and the dynamics of family are almost always related to a mental health foundation. Now, I'm not saying, if you've got a depressive condition, which is biological and it comes with your genetics, or that's one thing. And there's nature and nurture, right? There's external and then there's internal. But I'm talking about the external impact of family now. So keep in mind, we can have these different components which become the resulting affect. But right now I'm talking about family, the impact of other individuals. one of the things that I think that I have seen consistently is that drug dependence, whether you call it alcohol or being drug addicted, affects everyone, and it affects them directly. People will, the fight or flight reflex manifests in so many different ways. Some folks refuse to engage the client. They recoil completely. They've stepped out, and sometimes they've stepped out for years. So when you reach out to the mother, brother, sister, grandfather, and they don't want to talk because I haven't had contact with Lucy Lou, Louie or whatever for years, that is an invitation for me to have them get closer, because giving them the buffer of not being directly involved is protecting them in a way and allowing them to speak their mind for the way that the client used to be. And the fact that they haven't been hurt by the slings or arrows of the client's behavior recently allows them to share without most recent trauma. Whereas mother, brother, family member who interacts with them every day has their view, which is immediate. They're still bleeding from fresh wounds.
Right.
So one of the things that I did in the last year, there were a couple of instances where family members didn't want to participate.
Mm-hmm.
I always would get one person, normally the primary contact who contacted me, who would agree. And in the systems that I use a letter writing process where people do the bibliotherapy. They write down their feelings, the examples of hurt and their examples of pain. There's various forms of it depending on what kind of style of interventionist you learn. But there's the thing that I've adopted are this bibliotherapy. So I get somebody to write the letter and they send it to me. And I review it with them, and I call out anything which is spiteful or hurtful. We remember we're staying on point and we're being constructive. We are.
So if I can interrupt, so
Yep.
you actually asked the family member as part of the process, the writing process, is that you get them to write down all the feelings that they have in terms of the anger, the blame, whatever it is that they feel towards the individual, as well as some of the positives. And then you kind of go over that process with that
Yes.
individual. Okay. So you help them to feel validated in you help them feel validated in their feelings, and whatever they have felt towards the identified patient prior to going to the intervention.
Yes.
And you do that on an individualized level.
Yes.
And that is really great. I really like that. And the reason why I brought that up and wanted to really point it out, I had gotten an email from an old client of mine from a long time ago, and he had asked if he could write down all the things that he found out about this individual, and that he never got to write down, and say at the intervention. And so, I mean, it's interesting that you say that, because you're really ahead of the ball in your therapeutic kind of individualized sort of therapy without actually doing therapy, without facilitating therapy. But you're letting the person, you're acknowledging that individual for the feelings that they have, so you can make those connections, and anyway, I think that's great. Thank you for that. I love it. I love that. Thank you.
It's really this Jeff and Deborah have what they refer to as the 7-point letter. Now, I'm going to keep this tabula rasa, this white slate out. There are different philosophies, and they're all good.
Absolutely.
The different angles, the idea that those of us who are involved in the intervention angle of things keep in our toolbox these various sets of skills. Because as Arthur Westinghouse pointed out last week, often
Throw the book out. What was it? Throw the book out, right?
Throw the book out.
Throw the book out. Arthur, I love that. I will fully remember that always.
Well, because you got to punt. Sometimes you just got to punt.
Hey, I had to throw the book out 2 days ago, so I get it. I love it. Thank you, Arthur.
Well, it's but you get the job done. But here, let me just simply review.
Sure.
In the letter that I use, and thank you, Deborah and Jeff J., there's an introduction, which is an opening statement of love. And then you explain the love and the remembrances of that connection to the loved one and the things they did, the better days, their experiences when you were young, what we did. And then you reframe it and you go from, you shift to start talking about your understanding of addiction, that you understand it's addiction, and you sort of take the weight off of the person because it's the monster within that drives them to do those things. And then you list firsthand when you spilt your coffee on me when you were drunk, when you hit the tree, and then there's a commitment which you stand behind them, alongside them, underneath them, in front of them, with them, about as we move forward, you got me, I'm there. And then the ask. There's always got to be an ask in any sales process. So, how would you like to pay for that today? But in this ask is, which car would you like to get?
Yeah.
My car or the police car? No, I'm joking. The fundamental ask is, please, will you go with Howie, with Patty? Will you please take advantage of our putting everything together for you, taking care of the dog, work, the electric bill, your rent. Don't worry about the pool. Don't worry about, that. And then an affirmation of, you give your love and just reiterate that I will be here for you, your mother, brother, sister, whoever. And so those 7 points, to the best of the client's ability, to the best of the family member's ability. Now, more often than not, they're not going to be all 7 points, and they will be a mixture and a jumble. But the one thing I do take out is, scathing, anger. Those things get stricken out.
Sure.
Finger pointing and blaming, those things get taken away.
Absolutely.
And I give the letter back with cleaned up, just in the guidance to be supportive, loving, encouraging, and give direction.
Sure.
So that's the reason for that. But the reason I take for sharing about this, it doesn't take a professional to write the letter.
Right.
And as interventionists,
it does take a professional to write the letter, but it does take a professional to direct and support a family member so they can write the letter. I think that that's the key piece, is that if a family member is in this process of struggle and resistance and anger and pain and has been violated by their loved one because of their addictions or whatever has happened, they too need that validation, because the intervention, as we all say, is not just for the individual. It is for the entire family. So you do have, I think, it's really important, if any family members are listening to this podcast, that it is really important to have a professional that can help you rewrite your story, but also validate the story that you have so you can tell a different story.
That's the virtue of getting somebody who's been trained and has the experience. We are orchestra leaders. We will bring up one side of the orchestra. We will slow down the other side. We'll help people stay in tempo. We'll make it so that the mood of, in this metaphor, the mood of the music comes together, unified as a group, in harmony, quite literally. This is not a
Right.
bad metaphor at all. Now,
Right.
I also want to point out we are not clinicians.
Mhm.
I happen to wear a number of hats because I am a clinician. However, in the role of helping to intervene and get somebody to motivate so they can be brought to treatment,
Mhm.
there are opportunities for therapeutic intervention.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that we, the interventionists, necessarily need to be licensed therapists, psychologists, or what have you, clinical social workers. On the other hand, what we do need is to have a very good understanding of the landscape. So we
Mhm.
stay in our lane, we don't step on landmines, which will either come back to bite us in any way or the family in any way. We only
Mhm.
want the echo, the ramifications of our work, the ripples and result of what we
Mhm.
do to be
Mhm.
beneficial and enthusiastic.
Right.
So that's
Right.
the
Right.
cautionary tone that I put out to folks, but also the pat on the back, because, Patty, whether you, me, or anyone else, when we're out there, we are being therapeutic. We
Right.
are helping them to move forward in a healthy manner with
Right.
responsibility, maturity, and determination to have
Absolutely.
have the end in mind, and in
Mhm.
spite of resistance, which is the nature of today's discussion, still be omni-focused on getting things done. So let me jump to this little resistance story. No, as a matter of fact, we're going to take another quick break, and I'll come back to the resistance story when we return. If we ever return. What am I doing here? Here we go. The show are of the hosts, the guests, and callers. They do not necessarily reflect the views of Addiction Got a Minute or the organizations associated with them. Sort of missed the first part of that little warning, but the comments that Patty and I say are ours alone and do not represent any organization. So with that in mind, in the few minutes we have of our allotted time today, the resistance that I received recently was overcome with the primary contact person's writing of the letter. When they wrote the letter, I was able to contact another of the family member who didn't want to write a letter. I read the letter to them. Gone was there. Then I got a couple of versions and sent that to the other family member who also did not want to put any effort into it. When they saw what was written by the other family member, they got it. And they kind of really dumped their feelings. They let the feelings pour out. And I was able to help them cull it down to a 2-minute read, but only the core points. But they were so grateful that they had put it down on paper. And I explained, this is why people write journals. Journaling is so constructive. And I recommend to anyone who's listening, if you're suffering through a process, grab one of those essay books, the black and white speckled, cardboard bound little essay books, and put the date on the first page and write out your heart of where you're at that day. And then with each subsequent day through the process, write it out. And you'll find when you go back and read it, you'll be filled with pride in taking the steps. And it'll help you to help others, because now you'll be able to refer back to the struggles that you had. So there's something to be said with that. So anyway, that's how I use the letters. Also, Patty, for me, there's something called a bottom line letter. And this is delivered to the facility along with when the loved one arrives. There's a couple of envelopes. One of them is a copy of all the letters. Now, of course, the family members do know that these letters will be going with the client and they'll be going to the facility so that those letters can be read again, either in group or in private. And then there's another envelope which says, do not open. And I give it to the counselor and I say, it says do not open until they want to leave AMA. And if they want to leave AMA, open it. And in that envelope are the bottom lines. And again, thank you, Jeff and Deborah J. The bottom lines are reminders. Oh, by the way, says Grandma, if you leave against medical advice, if you do not finish this program as designed by them, I'm not right. You are being written out of the inheritance. And from Uncle Louie, who says, you know that Ford Mustang that we drove around in a lot and I told you that I'd give you a chance to buy it? Well, if you leave against medical advice, you'll never see that Mustang. And Mom says, if you leave, you're not allowed back in the house. And the sisters, the bottom lines. But these are bottom lines that people will stick to.
Yeah, I think that the other thing that I really try and reiterate when it comes to the bottom lines is to really try, again, coming from a loving kind of heartful place and just being real in the moment about, for instance, just letting the person know that, I was hoping that I would not have to read this letter. I love you. Please consider treatment, please consider this gift of treatment. And sort of sometimes the bottom line, sometimes there's nothing that a family member can actually take from the individual, in terms of stuff, outside stuff, whether it's cars, houses, money, maybe they, but what they can do is that they can start to create some healthy boundaries in their relation, how they move forward in their relationship with that individual. Because I'm not a big believer of kicking a person to the curb. I believe that you do have to set those limits and set those boundaries. And if it means, some families may say, look, I'm cutting the phone off. I'm not giving you no money. I am not doing anything anymore. I am done. Because that family member is done. But you may have a family member that might be in a place that they don't have anything to take. But what they can start to really focus on is what kind of a relationship do they want to have with this individual?
Very
and
good.
If this individual is not clean and sober, working on treatment, working on themselves, then it's very clear that that person that's writing that letter, they have some values in what it is that they want in their relationships. And if that's going against the individual that does not want to accept treatment, it doesn't mean that they don't have some bottom lines, is what I'm trying to get to. Because a lot of the times, the second letter is really, I always had the first and second letter approach. And the second letter is always really difficult for family members to kind of not so much wrap their head around. They understand, but they want to go real black and white, And I try and get them in that gray area to try and come to the middle of the road. What does this mean for you? What is it that you're willing to write down? Because anything that you write down, you need to take action on it. It's not what I want. It's what you want. So I try and bring them to that place of what is it that you want to write down here? What can you live with? Because you don't know. You don't know if after an intervention, hopefully the person's going to go to treatment and accept treatment. And even in the 2 weeks later, we hope that the person's going to accept treatment because the families all come together. But we don't know if that person is going to die. Okay. So as a family member, what is it that you can bring to the table that you can do the best that you can do, to try and make that connection with that individual. And so you can actually start to build a different relationship where you don't have to walk away feeling guilty. You don't have to walk away feeling ashamed and feeling that pressure, that you can walk away feeling hopeful. Again, it comes back to that place of hope.
Well, you touched on a really good point, Patty, and that is by the time the family has called us,
Mm-hmm.
the loved one is in such dire straits
Mm-hmm.
that it's damn near imminent end of life behavior.
Mm-hmm.
That clearly, if they continue in this direction, the quality of life will hardly be worth living.
Mm-hmm.
No less putting themselves in a physical situation where they'll be at an underpass in the middle of winter and freeze themselves to death kind of thing. So
Right.
that's really very interesting that you said that. And it's an ongoing challenge. I look forward to talking to other folks in the business. And for any of you out there who are not part of an organization that Patty and I are in, or that we don't know of you, please do me a favor. Contact us. Would love to get you on the show. The reason for this show is sharing the information. The reason for this show is lowering the hurdles to discussion. I want families to hear this. I want families to be part of it. Let's get this discussion going. Listen, I couldn't be happier if a family has done all the homework that they have, that they finally call us for guidance, and we see that they've recognized that they were not able to draw boundaries, that the borders were very diffused, and that they were always willing to capitulate. Because when people have normalized that kind of behavior, they're doing nothing but reinforcing that behavior, enabling that behavior. They don't mean to. Oh, one of the worst things, heartache to me. I had a mother sitting in front of me, and as she was describing what she was doing, she looked up at me and she said, with total belief, "But I'm not helping him to do that. Am I?" And I said, "You are. You are enabling." And she said, "Describe enable." And I explained by letting him live in the house, giving him money, letting the liquor company deliver booze. Oh, the tears.
I found this great little picture online, and anyway, I thought it was great. And it says enabling is a physical response to an emotional, painful experience.
Interesting. A physical response to an emotionally painful experience.
Right. Because when someone is in a lot of pain, right? If someone's in a lot of pain and they are continuing to enable the situation, right? They are sometimes, they're sometimes going through a lot of it. There's an action to what it is that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, paying the rent, picking them up, buying drugs for them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Picking them from jail, renting them apartments, buying them cars. There's all these things that parents cross the line and repeat over and over again, which is part of the cycle of enabling, But it's an action, right? It's an action to an emotional response. When someone is in that emotional response of hopelessness and fear for their loved one's life, and thinking that if they do A, B, and C, they put those actions in place, they do A, B, and C, then that person is going to get better. And then the person that's enabling is going to feel okay for the moment, but then all of a sudden, it starts all over again, this cycle of enabling. But it is an emotional response.
A physical response to an emotional.
Physical, yeah. I thought that was pretty cool.
It is. It is accurate. And remember, these things are being done out of love.
Right.
And in another case, very similar, but where the mother said, I can't kick my son out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want my son to be homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned to her, I said, so it's okay that you become homeless.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not going to take too much more of this behavior for your finances to be ruined.
Mm-hmm.
And you've already lost just about all of the money that you had because of the treatments that you've paid for, which have gotten absolutely nowhere. And the behavior that we've been seeing over the last couple of months are actually worse than they were prior to his earlier treatments.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you want to do? Anyway, this brings us pretty much to the end of our allotted time. Before we go, I want to remind folks that I can be reached at howiemarlin.com. The website has the URLs. It has our podcasts and this new video podcast that I'm doing that Patty and I will be working on. So we were joking about Patty, I have to get new lights and stuff like that. You've got nice hats to wear, am I right?
I do. I have a lot of hats. I'm going to start wearing some good hats. Yeah.
So I can be reached at howiemarlin.com. My email is available through that. And Patty, how can people reach you?
Yeah. Anyways, again, it's so great to hang out with you this morning, Howie, and talk about the solution, and also talk about some of the painful issues that families go through, and then meet us, people like us, and
Thank you.
We can definitely direct and help them as they kind of move forward to get through this process, what they're going through. Anyway, you can reach me, Patty Pike, www. Well, actually, my website is www.canam, CANAM, interventions, interventions.com, and you can also reach me at 415-827-3725. And I also do interventions both in Canada and the United States. So,
which is the Can-Am part
that's
of the
right.
website.
That's right.
Well, on behalf of Patty and myself, Howie Marlin, thanks, Patty. We'll be back again next week.
Yes.
Okay.
Looking forward to it. All right. Have a great day, and we'll see all of our viewers, or we'll talk soon.
Soon.
I've got a saying that describes my efforts. The best I can do is the best I can do, and I will. This brings us to the end of another episode of Addiction. Got a minute? I wish you warm breezes and clear sailing. Till next time, I'm Howie Marlin.